This is The Good Fight
with attorney Steve and Josh. All right, I'm really excited about this one, Josh. And finally, we got it recording this time. So I'm excited because we have two very special guests. Not one,
two,
but two.
One more than one less than two.
That's right. I feel like we can actually exploit the full use of the new Rodecaster Pro in that it only has 4 inputs. Although
this is not a sponsored video.
I know, right?
It should be.
Yeah.
We should contact Rode.
Rode, if you're listening.
Along with FileVine.
Sponsor us. So we are recording, everybody, I promise, okay? Because it's telling me right up here. All right? So we have, like I said, we have two very special guests, two very lovely ladies. My good friend, Siannah Collado-Boutte and Diana Diskin, who I just met today. Very nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you, too.
But I got two very fierce trial lawyers sitting here with us in our Uptown Whittier Law Office. And by way of brief introduction, I met Siannah, I don't know, 8 months ago or something like that. I was at a hearing in front of the Honorable Mark Borenstein in Stanley Moss Courthouse. Yeah, I love that it draws that kind of muster here. But anyway, very difficult judge to say the least. And there was Siannah outside, and we began to commiserate about how lousy of an experience we both had in our respective trials in front of the Honorable Mark Borenstein. Josh, you can relate a little bit there, co-counsel there with me. But anyway, I met Siannah, and our friendship has blossomed ever since, I think. But Siannah, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I was born and raised in San Pedro, California, to Panamanian immigrant parents, and I went to junior high and high school in Panama. Not a lot of people know that about me. I was a DA for 9 years, and then I switched over to personal injury 3 years ago, and I've been with the Simon Law Group since. Most recently, I am of counsel to them and opened my own firm called SC Law. I went to SC too, so it's a play on my initials
I like that.
My alma mater.
Awesome. Is that like a homonym or a homophone or something like that? I don't know.
We were having the discussion last time. I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Well, congratulations. I'm very happy to hear that, actually. Diana Diskin, like I said, I think earlier, we just met today, but I feel like it's the beginning of a great friendship and partnership, right? Because we talked about a couple cases that we're going to be working on together.
Yep.
So, but tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do, Diana.
So I started my law career doing medical malpractice defense, and I did that for about 5 years and didn't go to the doctor at all during that period. Took me a long time to go back to doctors, and I just by sheer luck and the generosity of somebody who was an opposing counsel on one of my defense cases, a wonderful plaintiff's attorney named Albro Lundy, I ended up getting a job at Gary Dordick's firm, and I was there for 6.5 years. I just went out on my own. I'm now of counsel at Lewis, Merenstein, Wiki, Sherwin, and Lee in Woodland Hills.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, and the best part is that I have not met any of those people. I don't know.
You're kidding.
Yeah, no, I have no idea if they actually exist.
Oh, boy.
Right.
So a term that we hear a lot about the defense is the dark side, right? So you were once with the dark side, huh?
I was once with the dark side, and the funny thing is that when I was, we called ourselves the White Hats. So
right?
I don't
Look
understand.
At that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Well, just to be clear for all our listeners who are listening right now, we are all plaintiffs' lawyers now, right? I by the way, I actually worked at a defense firm too.
Oh,
so
there you go. So
yeah.
we all
pure blood.
Not pure blood, as Bob, I think Bob refers to, right? Are you pure blood, I guess? Or?
I've been always on the plaintiff. I represent the people, both sides. When I was on the criminal side, so I think I am, but defense attorneys would disagree with that.
I see. I can understand that. So today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, I think, and it's kind of sad, I guess, for lack of a better word, that it's even a topic, really, right? Because when we think of the law and we think of the scales of justice and these kinds of terms that we hear about all the time as it relates to our profession, the law should be equal. I mean, I believe the Constitution says it. We're all equal under the law, are we not?
We're supposed to be. And
so I feel like, unfortunately, women in this profession are not treated equally. Off the air, we were talking about a movie that my wife and I saw together on the basis of sex. And it's about the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who, of course, was a U.S. Supreme Court justice, and she fought.
Is Supreme Court.
Oh gosh! Wow!
Oh my
Don't
gosh,
insult
say
the
that.
SCOTUS, if you're listening,
Jeez.
sorry. I thought because of her health, she's.
No.
There go the ratings.
We need her there.
Apologize. Yeah, no. Okay, so she is. I apologize. She's.
Just spit 3 times and like throw some salt.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, right? It's bad luck.
Go to church. Dude.
So she is still a U.S. Supreme Court justice. I apologize, Mrs. Ginsburg, if you're listening. But, she fought really hard for equal women's rights under the law. And the sort of seminal case that the movie portrays is one where her and her husband, who was a tax lawyer, I don't know if he's still alive or whatever, but...
No, he's dead.
Is he dead?
Marty Ginsburg.
Marty Ginsburg, who was a tax lawyer. And there was a very unique way that the government, the IRS, I guess, treated a certain class of individuals. And in this case, there was a law that discriminated on the basis of sex, on the basis of gender. And so she's done a lot to sort of champion and be an advocate for women and make a lot of positive changes under the law. But I'm glad that I have 2 very awesome women with me here today, because one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure there's a lot of young, I hope there to be a lot of young female listeners who might be thinking about becoming a lawyer, or maybe even going into law school, and some of the sort of tough choices that they might be thinking about as it relates to this idea that the law, at least the profession of being an attorney, is traditionally very male driven. When you think of a lawyer, sadly, unfortunately, I believe, and I hope I'm wrong, but that people think of males, or even judges, right? But there are a lot of female judges, a lot of female lawyers, right? I don't know what the ratio is or whatever, but certainly it's one that traditionally, at least, has been one that's been, I don't know what's the word, male driven, right? And so, Siannah, let me ask you this. I believe you used to work at the prosecutor's office, yes?
Yes.
And now you're a civil lawyer, but have you ever felt discriminated or maybe even uncomfortable either in the courtroom or at a law firm, anything like that in your past? And tell us a little bit about that.
I think I briefly told you off the record. When I was on the criminal side, I never really noticed it as much. I think it's pretty fair, like 50-50 women and men in both sides, prosecution and defense, and on the bench. I probably was discriminated a little bit, like Josh mentioned, more on the basis of age. I looked young. I wear my hair in a ponytail, so I was constantly, confused with being the law clerk.
Sure.
I don't really care about that, but switching over to civil, I've noticed it more. It's more of a old white male kind of boys club.
Okay.
And whenever I'd walk in and also, get are you the court reporter? Are you the videographer?
Oh, gosh.
Are you the defendant? This defense attorney proceeded to prep me for depo. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry, did you think I'm your client?
Yeah.
So that's stuff that I've seen. But, I think I could focus on the negative, but I choose to focus on the positive.
Sure.
And
Of course.
I had a crazy trial last summer where, it was this woman was killed. And I was able to use my experiences as a mother, because our daughters are a month apart, to channel that emotion and
like that.
those non-economic damages that I know the judge definitely considered and, almost cried, and so did my co-counsel. So I feel like I choose to use those qualities that we have to be underestimated and undervalued in court to my advantage.
Of course. Kind of reminds me of, I've said this before, and I really like it, but OJ, he was interviewed one day, and somebody asked him,
Did you do it?
No, this right. This is way before he became famous. He was still a football player. I think he was playing for USC or in the NFL at this point of his life.
You had
but
to bring it up because he's from Cal.
You
Cal, you had to bring up OJ and the.
Well, he went to USC.
I know.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he's a murderer.
He's a Trojan. Yeah.
He's a murderer. Crazy how he has his Heisman and Reggie doesn't.
I know.
Yeah.
Double standard.
But somebody asked him, how do you associate, or how do you, something about, his race, about being black or something like that. And he looks at the camera and he's like, I ain't black. I'm OJ. Yeah. So for him, he didn't associate himself with white, black, or male, whatever, right? I mean, for him, it was just like, I'm just a guy trying to get by in life, and I happen to have great football skills or whatever. And I love that you have sort of have this thick layer of skin where you refuse to be sort of mistreated, or maybe even you didn't even feel that way, and that's great because you have this sort of thick layer where it's like, well, I'm just a badass trial lawyer. That's what I am. And I walk into the courtroom, and my job is to advocate for my client, and my job is to tell a story to the jury. And but tell me a little. So you touched a little bit about sort of channeling that into a positive thing, right? Are there any other instances where maybe you use that to your advantage as it relates to speaking with the jury, or I know you talked about one thing about being a mother, but is there anything else, maybe not even to a jury, but just kind of, dealing with co-counsel or dealing with judges? Have there been judges who have sort of taken a misogynistic maybe approach, and how do you deal with that, Siannah?
I can't say whether or not it was actually misogynistic or if he was just a jerk in general, but I think he underestimated me and was giving me he's barking from the bench and telling me that he wasn't going to allow this, and I asked to approach. And I basically told him, I'm not going to back down. I'm going to represent my client. I'm going to prove this case. I will have this doctor on the stand for 3 days if necessary. But this is what's going to go down.
Right.
And I think that's when he was like, oh, shit, okay, she's serious. And I had to blaze my own trails because unlike other people, I didn't have my mommy and daddy that were attorneys, or I didn't have any female lawyers that I knew of growing up.
Okay.
I was fortunate to have a mentor, Bill Beverly, who took me under his wing and was like amazing. But I feel because I'm used to having to break down those doors and make my own path, that this guy's not going to intimidate me. I dealt with murders in Compton. Do you think I'm going to be scared of like a punk judge on a bench that doesn't follow the law?
I love it.
And is not respected by his peers? So no.
I love it. Yeah. It's interesting that I know which judge we're talking about, but I don't know if our listeners, I actually don't care. I think actually the First Amendment the First Amendment of the Constitution protects our ability to speak openly about things that we may not like. In this case, a judge who we both had the pleasure of, I think I just gave it away there. But are you referring to that judge?
I am, and I actually called my friend's dad, who's an attorney,
okay,
while I was going to go argue this, because I figured I might be held in contempt if it got a little too contentious.
Sure.
And I had him on speed dial. I was like, look, it's about to go down if he tries to hold me in contempt because I'm proceeding with, against his desires with this weird standard he had.
Yeah.
I didn't get to that point, but I was willing to do it for my client.
Well, I don't know if this plays into the fact that we had a female client in his courtroom, but do you remember, Josh, when our client, who was, 38-year-old mom of two, one with very severe special needs, was testifying, and Judge Bornstein made it a point to literally, he pounded on the table and was yelling at her.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, that's when I got into it with him.
You did.
We took our afternoon break or something like that, and I stood up, and he asked if we had anything to say, and I did. I told him, look, our client didn't go to law school. If she's not prepped well enough and she doesn't understand the rules of evidence as it pertains to her testimony, that's our fault. You can yell at us. You don't need to sit here berating my client about her, her inability to grasp where you're trying to go with whatever you're trying to do by intimidating her. And I thought he was going to pick me up and throw me out of the courtroom, but he just
was awesome.
Put his head down and walked back into chambers.
I love that you did that.
And they say women are emotional. I mean, if he was so emotional on that bench, barking at people, yelling. I had several different people that I know, like criminal lawyers, pop in to watch me in trial because I was downtown. And they're like, is that how it is in civil? Like, they just yell at the jurors, they yell at the clients. I was like, no, but this is how this judge does it.
Right.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Diana, let me ask you a little bit about sort of your experiences, not necessarily in the courtroom, but maybe at a big firm or small firm, whatever the case may be. But tell us a little bit about maybe a situation where because you're a female lawyer, not just a female, but a female lawyer who's doing well at what you're doing, but have felt maybe some sense of uncomfortability or discrimination even, or just not treated equally as the boys, as Siannah was mentioning.
I think that when I was on the defense, things are when you're on the plaintiff side, every plaintiff's law firm is different, and there's just this great variety of how offices are run and how people interact with one another. On the defense side, it's kind of more lockstep. and there's this feeling of tradition, and you do get that overwhelming sense of you are in an old white man's world. And the thing that is really most prevalent, the most disturbing thing, is that feeling of lack of opportunity. There are many women who are lawyers. There are many women who are in law school. I think that in terms of law school and in terms of the practice, we're pretty much at a 50-50, maybe even a few percentage points more than 50 for women. But in terms of women being partners, women being known as trial attorneys, women on the defense side having a healthy book of business where they can become a named equity partner, and on the plaintiff side be in the position where they can have their own firm or where they can also be a partner at a plaintiff's firm. We're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet. I mean, there are many studies about women in big law, for example, being absent. There's so few, and on the plaintiff side, it's better, but we're still not there.
That's an interesting concept, Josh. I mean, the idea that, because you mentioned sort of two classes of or groups of people, right? Because you said boys, but you said white too, which are obviously. It connotes a very,
there's an enormous diversity problem.
Racial,
one firm that I worked at, you could count on one hand. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that they ever had any African Americans who had ever worked there. But if they had, it was maybe one. Right. And then you could count on one, maybe two hands, how many women had been there. And this was a law firm that was generations old. And so it was, a point of some excitement when there was somebody who was not white and male who was hired.
Yeah. It's interesting too, like, I don't know so this is our second take. I'll let my listeners know that I forgot to hit the record button on the first take, but I don't know if it was the first take or the second take. We were talking about Supreme Court of the United States. And, but if you look at SCOTUS, right, because now we have a Hispanic female Supreme Court justice, Justice, the African American Thomas. Yeah, I remember I was a kid actually when he was going through the same rigmarole that the most recent Supreme Court justice had to undergo, right? Regarding, allegedly Anita Hill, exactly. But so, yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, over time, you've seen the Supreme Court of the United States kind of, selectively undergo this transformation from being male white bench, right, to now being this multicultural, multi-diverse institution.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still a product of, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
Because they're still dealing with the same issues, right? Yeah. When we have a diverse bench and they're dealing with, they no longer have to deal with the diversity issues, then we'll have made progress, right? But while they're still dealing with issues of gay marriage and gender rights, then what does it matter, right? At that, when they stop having to hear those cases is when real progress will be made.
Interesting. Wow.
I agree. We're still in an era where we're struggling for LGBTQ or women's rights too. I mean, the Violence Against Women's Act and things like that, and pay parity. I remember watching the Anita Hill hearings, and it was a lot for a young person to take in and foreboding for the future. Yeah. Something to really, really absorb and think, oh, that's okay. That's how things work out in the real world. It's
interesting because now that we're talking about this topic, the most recent one, help me out here, he was appointed by Trump. Kavanaugh, right? Because the thing that he was under most scrutiny for was an incident that allegedly happened. It probably did happen when he was like 16 or 17, as it relates to this young woman who, right, was at a party with him. There was a group party. It was somebody's house, and they were drinking beer. I love beer, right? And he was upstairs allegedly with a friend of his, two males, and they assaulted this woman who's now doing very well for herself. She's a doctor, I believe, right? But I mean, it's crazy to me that, And I'm not sure, well, I guess it is necessarily something that has to do with the law, because you have a white male's credibility, right, and his capacity to be on the bench, right? But here, as more specific to that, is the fact that he was accused of assaulting a woman. Now, if the roles were reversed, I don't think you would have had a female under so much scrutiny.
Well, I don't even think it would have come up.
Exactly.
I don't even think it would have come up.
Right. So you do have, unfortunately, this sort of idea in America that this male dominance that we're talking about, and sort of this idea that men somehow have this power over women. I think it's illogical, right? It's nonsensical. But unfortunately, we have to have laws, and we have to have women, advocates to go in there and fight for these rights, right? I mean, what do you think, Siannah? Is this? I mean, I know, and I really do your approach, because I too feel like that a lot. When I was a young lawyer, I mean, I'm 11 years practicing, but in the beginning, even before I was a lawyer, the way people would say things to me was the way that it affected my ability to kind of think quick on my feet. For example, if somebody was aggressive in the way that they were talking to me, before I could even respond analytically or intellectually to what they were saying, I was more consumed with how they were saying it to me, right? And so I made it a point to kind of develop this thick skin, or this nothing else matters. The only thing that matters is my ability to advocate zealously for my client. It doesn't matter if I'm Hispanic. It doesn't matter if I'm arguing in a courtroom where there's a white male judge, or whatever the case may be. That all that other stuff is so ancillary, and now it's not even something that's even on my radar, right? And I think, and I know you have that same approach, and I love that, because that's really the way that if you're going to be a successful person, I think you kind of have to have that sort of gumption. You know what I mean? But I'm glad too that you're able to sort of see it, right? See that disparity or that unjust nature.
Well, it's obviously there. I mean, just because I choose not to focus on it doesn't mean it's not there. I think that there's the subtle issues when you go to court. Let's say you're with a junior attorney who happens to be male, and the judge is deferring to the male counterpart, and he's like, no, she's lead counsel, kind of talk to her. Right. But it's just an automatic, regardless.
Terrible.
It's not possible that the woman knows what she's talking about.
Right.
But I do feel like I have an obligation to make things. I heard this expression recently: carry as you climb. So the farther up I get up the ladder, I should bring other women with me.
I like that.
And I've been approached by several girls throughout my life, and now women, that are looking into law, or actually in law school, or just graduated, and want me to mentor them, because they're like, you're a trial lawyer, you're a mom, I wanted to see how you do it. Not that I have figured it out. I'm constantly balancing.
We're always learning.
But I do feel like I have an obligation to help them, because hopefully by the time my daughter, who's 3 now, gets to a professional environment, whether it's law or medicine, whatever she wants to do, I don't care, as long as she's happy, she doesn't have to deal with all that BS that we've been experiencing. And though it's not as bad as RBG's time, but it's getting hopefully easier for the future generations.
Sure.
What is the relationship like between female attorneys? Is there a sense of camaraderie, or what's that feeling like?
I feel like there is, but I'm part of this group called Law Mamas, and it's 15,000 women across the country that are lawyers and moms, and we commiserate, and we try to help each other out. There's a back call, and everyone jumps to I can help you, I know someone there. So I think it's in that sense. Obviously there's some women that tend to be catty and jealous, and but that's just who they were, mean girls in high school, and won't change much.
Right.
But I mean, Diana and I went to law school together, same section, and although we didn't really keep in touch during my criminal phase, not criminal phase.
Yeah,
that's
wow.
I didn't talk to you while you were in jail.
So
Robin
we didn't keep in
Banks.
touch. When we saw each other at COC in November 2016, it was back at it, and she was so helpful and has guided me throughout the process. I'm I'm doing a depo. What's a depo? Answering my stupid questions. So I feel like that's just the type of person I am, and I surround myself by positive people. Whether or not you choose to pick people that are not as positive, that's your own choice. But I don't know. What about you, Diana?
I think that among younger attorneys, there's they feel freer about coming to you for advice. They feel that the idea of mentorship is more accepted. I think that my generation, particularly starting in the defense field, it was just difficult finding a mentor. It was difficult finding other female attorneys who were in a position where they were considered senior to you in a significant fashion with the actual significant experience in trial and deposition and things like that. I agree about the carry as you climb. It's I think completely exactly the way that you're supposed to do it.
It's a great approach.
But you have to remember that the generations that came before you, they did carry as they climbed. It might not be in the same way that we do now because, of course, the environment wasn't as open about that type of thing. They had to bust down doors, really, really fight to even have a position. Women in the law is a relatively, in a historical sense, relatively new proposition. We have only really in America, in California, only been in the law for probably less than 150 years. I think the first woman who was licensed to practice was in the late 19th century. And you can easily imagine how few women were licensed to practice as lawyers between that time and the 1950s through the 1960s, and then in the 1970s and 80s, a little bit more, but that was some serious bashing through history and opening up this world for everybody else.
Amazing. As we wrap up here, I'd like to ask you ladies, and I'll ask the both of you, but let's start with you, Siannah. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about law school, or maybe they're in law school and thinking about what career choice they'd like to get into, if they're a female?
Well, I mean, it's not just for females in general. I'd say for any person. If you're in law school or considering it, like find someone that's doing what you think you want to do, and take them out to coffee or lunch or something like that, because I thought I wanted to do sports law, and I worked with Lee Steinberg and Warren Moo, and I thought I was going to be a sports lawyer, and it was fun. I went to Super Bowl with them, and represented high profile clients, but I realized it was different for a woman to be a sports agent than a man, and I'm glad I figured that out in law school. So then I was able to switch and do criminal prosecution. But just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying earlier, I do believe that we stand on the shoulders of the women that came before us. I'm not underestimating what they did before. I'm grateful for everything they did. But the advice would just talk to someone, because you want to make sure that you're getting into it for the right reasons, that the type of law you want to practice is in line with your goals, your moral compass, your balance of life. If you want to be a mother, if you want to be, if you don't want to be, it's a matter of your personal choices. And I think it's important to talk to as many people as you can before you commit to going into practice, because I know a lot of friends that went into defense because they felt like I need to get a job, right? And then they get stuck in this for 5-6 years, and then by the time they get out, they're like, well, now I'm kind of like in the golden handcuffs per se. So if you have the opportunity in law school, you're exposed to so many different people, get mentors or talk to them there, and then see where you want to go.
Great advice. Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly. That, and I would also say, if you have the opportunity, if you're in law school and you have the opportunity of working in a law firm over a summer, you really need to go and do that. That way you can see whether you can survive in an office environment. Some people cannot. Being in an office day after day takes a certain amount of, personality, stretching and patience and stuff like that. And so if that's not something that your personality is going to fit to, then you need to know that ASAP. If you're in law school and you're a woman, it's exactly the same as if you're a man. It's a high stress field. You need to be aware that you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights.
That's for sure.
Very rewarding. It's very rewarding, nonetheless.
Is it? I think for our next podcast, I think it was you, Diana, who broached this topic, but I'd like to explore it a little bit more as it relates to sort of the difference between a defense firm and a plaintiff's firm, as it relates to kind of the culture and the ambiance and the environment and the people you're dealing with and cattiness. I think you mentioned that word. It's an interesting concept in general, but specifically when you talk, because I have worked at a defense firm, so I know when you mentioned it, I knew exactly. I can empathize with you, and you've actually worked at a defense firm too.
Yeah, I clerked for the defense firm, and it's like just the office culture is night and day. It's like you show up there, and it's like, okay, I got to walk this way and go to my office, and I'm going to sit in here for the rest of the day. Whereas at a plaintiff's firm, I don't even know if I sit in my chair for an hour at a time.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. We don't have to discuss it today, but maybe we can have you lovely ladies back one day and we can talk about it, because I think it's a fascinating topic, that one specifically.
Siannah, how many men ask you to be their mentor?
I've had a couple.
Good.
Yeah, I've had a couple.
Awesome. And by the way, Siannah, I hope that you don't, or anyone really, thinks I'm a misogynist or anything. It sucks that we even have to talk about it, but it's definitely something, it's taboo for sure, and we like to talk about taboo subjects on this podcast. We talk about it all the time, so anyway.
No, I never got that impression. I think you're taking advantage of the opportunity. We're both here to talk about it.
Yeah.
And if anything, it educates other employers of things they should be aware of and
For
how
sure.
they could provide mentorship and avoid the pitfalls that we've been exposed to.
Right. All right. Well, thanks again, lovely ladies. We can adjourn today's meeting and our today's session, if you will.
Thanks for having us.
I really appreciate you two coming out to Whittier, the lovely town of Whittier, where the girls are prettier, as they say. And hopefully we can get you again for another podcast. What do you think? Thank you. You've been listening to The Good Fight with attorneys Steve and Josh, again, here in Uptown, lovely Whittier. Give us a call if you have a legal question or an itch that you'd like to get out there. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, exactly.